This meeting is being recorded.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Today, me and my friend going to present material about language maintenance and shift in EFL context. The members are I, myself, Tsamara Nazhiifa Putri, and my friend Anindya Zahra Humaira. First, we are going to explain about what is language shift and maintenance. So, language shift is the process by which a group of people who speak one language gradually switch to another. When language shift occurs, it shifts most of the time towards the language of the dominant group, which could lead to the removal of the local language. When the speakers of a language believe that their own language is no longer suited for speaking, they frequently switch to another language that is more suitable for them. Okay. For language maintenance, it refers to the continued usage from a speaker, groups, or community of a language in all sphere of life despite of a competition from a more regionally and socially dominating language. It can also be defined as the extent to which an individual or a group continues to use their language, especially in bilingual or multilingual areas or among immigrant groups, whereas language shift if the process by which a new language is acquired by a new community, usually resulting in the loss of the community's first language. Okay, next will be explained by my friend Anindya.
I will be explaining about language shift in different communities. Next slide, please. There are three different communities in language shifting. The first one is migrant minorities. Second one is non-migrant communities. Third one is migrant majorities. For migrant minority example is when a young British Hindu woman who lives in a conventry. Her family moved to Britain from Uganda in 1970. When she was 5 years old, she started work on the shop floor in a bicycle factory when she was 16. At home, Madhavan speaks Gujarati with her parents and her grandparents. Although she had learned English at school, she found she didn't need much at work. Many of the girls working with her also spoke Gujarati, so when it wasn't too noisy, they would talk to each other in their home language. Second one is non-migrant communities. For example, Armin is an Iranian teacher of English. He is concerned that Farsi, the official language of Iran, is displacing his native language, Azeri. One piece of evidence supporting his concern about Azeri is that the streets of his hometown, Tabriz, are full of signs in the Farsi language. What is more, people are not taught to read and write Azeri, despite the fact that there is a rich literature in the language, some of it housed in books in the Tabriz library. So there is a vicious circle. People don't use Azeri in public signs because they know that literacy in Azeri is almost non-existent. Third one is migrant majorities. For example, Tamati lives in Wanganui, a large New Zealand town. He is 10 years old and he speaks and understands only English. Though he knows a few Maori phrases, none of his mates know any Maori either. His grandparents speak Maori. However, Whenever there is a big gathering, such as funeral or an important tribal meeting, his grandparents is one of the best speakers. Tamati's mother and father understand Maori, but they are non-fluent speakers. They can manage a short, simple conversation, but that's about it. Tamati's older sister, Miriama, has just started at a preschool where Maori is used, so he thinks maybe he'll learn a bit from her. The next material will be presented by my friend Tsamara.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about language death and language loss. Language death is when a language is no longer spoken anywhere because the people who speak it have all died. The language died with them. There's also a process of language gradually dying. Another language eventually replaces the ethnic language functions in each area, as the domains in which the speakers of the dying language utilize it narrow, their proficiency deteriorates. As for language loss, is when the spread of a majority group language into more and more domains, the number of contexts in which individuals use the ethnic language diminishes. The language usually retreats till it is used only in the home, and finally it is restricted to such personal activities as counting, praying, and dreaming. Next material is back to my friend Anindya.
I'm going to talk this time about factors contributing to language shift. Next slide, please. So there are three fields that are the factors contributing to the language shifting. The first one is economic, social, and political. Second is demographic, and third one is attitudes and values. Can you please click any button? So yes, thank you. Economic, social, and political factors is that I can explain is the dominant language is associated with social status and prestige. Obtaining work is the obvious economic reason for learning another language, and the pressure of institutional domains such as schools and the med. What factors lead a community to shift from using one language to using another is the most obvious factor is that the community sees an important reason for learning the second language. The reasons are often economic, but they may also be political, as in the case of Israel. Obtaining work is the most obvious economic reason for learning another language. In English-dominated countries, for instance, people learn English in order to get a good job. This results in bilingualism. Bilingualism is always a necessary precursor of language shift, although as stage diglossic communities demonstrate, it does not always result in shift. Second is demographic factors. Language shift is faster in urban areas than rural ones, and intermarriage between groups can accelerate language shift. It means that demographic factors are also relevant in accounting for the speed of language shift. Resistance to language shift tends to last longer in rural than in urban areas because this is partly because rural groups tend to be isolated from the centers of political power for longer, and they can meet most of their social needs in ethnic or minority language. So for example, because of their relative social isolation, Ukrainians in Canada who live out of town on farms have maintained their ethnic language better than those in the towns. Third one is attitudes and values. Language shift is slower among communities where the minority language is highly valued. Therefore, when the language is seen as an important symbol of ethnic identity, it is generally maintained longer and vice versa. Language shift tends to be slower among communities because the status of a language international can contribute to these positive attitudes. Maintaining French in Canada and the USA is easier because French is a language with international status. The next slide, material will be presented by my friend, Tsamara.
Okay, next is how the minority language is maintained. Factors, there are certain social factors which seem to keep minority language group from shifting language, at least for a time, such as the first one is the language is considered as an important symbol of a minority group's identity. Then second, if families from a minority group live near each other and see each other frequently, this also helps them maintain their language. Then the degree and frequency of contact with the homeland. A regular stream of new migrants or even visitors will keep the need for using the language alive. Then, members of a minority community can take active steps to protect its language, such as discouraging intermarriage. If we consider the influence of social factors such as participants and setting, for instance, on language choice, it is clear that social factors may help resist the influence of economic pressures. Then, a group of who manage to ensure their language is used in settings such as school or their place of worship will increase the chances of language maintenance. The last one is minority group, which can mobilize institutions such as education, law, and administration, religion, and the media to support language maintenance. Then there's ethnolinguistic vitality. Howard uh, Giles and his colleagues suggest that we can predict the likelihood that a language will be maintained by measuring its ethnolinguistic vitality. Three components are involved. The first one is the status of the language as indicated by attitudes towards it. Second, the size of the group who uses the language and their distribution, for example, concentrated or scattered. Then the final one is the extent to which the language enjoys institutional support. Then back to my friend Anindya.
Language revival. Next slide, please. Thank you. Reviving a language. It is the attempt of the interested parties, individuals, cultures, governments to recover the spoken use of the language. The process is also referred to as language revitalization. It happens when a community becomes aware that its language is in danger of disappearing and takes steps to revive it. For example, that in 1840, two-thirds of the Welsh people spoke Welsh, but by 1980, only 20% of the population spoke Welsh. Therefore, the Welsh people began a revival process of Welsh language by using a Welsh language TV channel and bilingual education programs that use Welsh as the medium of instruction at schools. I think that is all from our presentation today. Thank you for watching, and I hope that the material will help. That's all from us. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.